Welcome to the ADNA Presents. It is a pleasure to have Colleen Connor join us today again. She is the co-founder of Audio Description Training Retreats and now runs Audio Description Training Retreats based out of Los Angeles. Colleen earned a Bachelor of Musical Theater from the Catholic University of America. She attended the London Dramatic Academy in the UK. She is a blind expert in the audio description industry. And if I may say that she has trained some of the best of the best when it comes to all those great streaming shows that you hear. Those scripts have been written by tons of Colleen's students. This is a really valuable conversation we're about to have here, and I can't tell you how joyous it is that she has set aside some time to be a part of this interview and also share some of her background and experiences and where audio description is headed. So with that, I'm not sure if Joplin is joining you. You're seeing eye dog, but
Yes,
thank you for
Joplin.
joining us.
Joplin is normally always here, sort of to the right of me on one of her chaise longues.
Great.
She's a
Did you just
diva.
Did you just use a wet leg song reference there for us, or am I just projecting?
Uh,
Have you heard
I
that
don't know
song?
what that
Oh,
is.
that's a separate conversation. That has nothing to do with AD. Anyway, hi, Colleen.
Hi, Roy. It's so nice to meet you for the very first time.
There's a little sarcasm dripping from your mouth if you want to wipe that off. Colleen and I have collaborated on, I'd say a bunch, more than a bunch of different panels, specifically talking about audio description voice talents and how to contribute their best work. She has been a part of our workshops, and most importantly, she just gets it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's been a wild few years for audio description. I think especially since the pandemic hit in the past 2 years, I mean, there's been a lot of change very quickly for a lot of different marginalized groups, including those of us who are involved in or patrons of audio description.
What do you think about those changes? Like, I'm thinking about our interview, which was during the earlier part of the pandemic. You know, as you have said publicly, that AD training retreats used to be an actual retreat where you go somewhere, and now it's virtual. It seems like that virtual thing has changed culture and technology on the AD side. I like to focus on that, but wherever you want to go with this, how have things changed since the last time you shared your thoughts on this podcast?
I mean, it was one of those things where Jan Volgaropoulos and myself founded audio description training retreats in 2015. And Jan is based out of North Carolina. And so at the time, I was based out of Virginia. So it wasn't quite as far as Los Angeles. So we would have 8 participants, and they still traveled from all over the world. And we would sort of have them at a lake house or like a retreat sort of area, and we'd provide everything. And part of it was the getting away from your day job and your family and being immersed in networking with this group of people you were studying a new art form with. And Jan is, I mean, a fabulous lady and did a lot of live description for a long time. And she had so many great ideas for like curriculum and like how to explain things. And so I sort of combined with her this, she's sighted. And so it was sort of this blind co-teacher with a sighted co-teacher rather than just being like a consultant for the class, which I really appreciated. And ultimately, it allowed me to become much more familiar with the ins and outs of audio description. And I sort of ate it up wherever I looked, including, of course, networking with all of the professionals and people who would come to the trainings. And so when the pandemic hit, we, of course, were like, like we don't get that sort of family aspect of it and like the really close sort of bonding and nature and rest sort of side of it. But we do still, with the virtual trainings, a lot of what we are based in is the work-life balance mentality. I myself am blind, and I also have chronic illness and a couple other things. And so one of the things that you have to sort of grapple with as you become an adult especially during the pandemic, everybody was very stressed out and a lot of people weren't getting as much work. And so people were wondering, how do I do everything from home? And in one way, it became, as you mentioned, like a virtual benefit. And so for us, we decided, let's see if we can transfer this to a Zoom thing. And, besides the networking and sort of the bonding family and like professionalism outlook on audio description, we also are huge on feedback and actual practice. So there's only so much you can like read and talk at someone about audio description before it's like, you need to do this to see if you can do it, or if you're interested in it, or if you need to start listening to it and practicing it. And you can't just like pick this up and read it cold. That is going on, but you can tell. So when we went virtual, the cool thing about that was that there's no more travel expenses. Also, the food and the excursion kind of expenses and stuff got cut out of it. So I was able to lower the tuition a little bit for people. And part of what I do as well is it's trying to be affordable right now. I think we're all struggling, especially if you're, they call it the gig economy, or, if you're working job to job or you're kind of freelance with things. This virtual aspect allowed people to do more work in more places, but also the competition became greater and the compliance started to get emphasized. And so the larger corporations and government agencies and stuff like that were all realizing, okay, well, people can't come in person anymore because of the pandemic. So we're going to make videos. We're all going to put everything online. And when you do that, the laws actually do say you have to make this accessible. And so most people are like, cool, we're going to slap some captions on there and we're good. And it's like, no, you also have to do audio description. And people go, what's audio description? And then when you explain it, people either become sort of fascinated and want to get involved in providing quality audio description, or it becomes, okay, how do we check that box off as well? So how do we get all this stuff online? Just get it out, just get it online. I don't understand. With everyone being at home, the same thing happened with entertainment. Movie theaters weren't a thing, and theaters weren't a thing. So audio description is not only pre-recorded media, but also live performances and plays and broadcast television of parades and stuff like that, art galleries and national parks and all that stuff. You couldn't go. And so it became, okay, how do we put everything online, but also make it accessible? And so we sort of got this influx of interested people who were voice artists and national park guides and teachers and stuff saying, so I have to do this thing called audio description and my boss sent me here, or like, so my school has to do audio description and I want to do a good job, but I caption. So like, what do I do? And so audio description has continued to be this organic thing that if you teach it, what we try to do is provide some structure to learning. There are best practices, but there isn't really one cut and dry way to do audio description, because as humans, we all have different life experiences, and you're going to bring your life experience to your objective description. And so we created this online sort of networking community the same way we tried to do with people in person. And so we still keep the class sizes small. We try to do 8 students. And I took over the business at the start of this year. Jan retired, well deserved. And I have kind of embraced this virtual atmosphere just because for a lot of us with disabilities, it's a lot of people, it's great to work from home. Like, this is fabulous. No one's ever hired us before. Like, please hire us. And like I said, that just this new interest from people who have home studios and people who, oh, I want to get into this. And I've heard about this audio description stuff because of streaming services starting to be more popular and everybody needing to get everything from the internet and from home. So, how do I get money doing this too? And much like anything else, like I said, I try and keep the tuition affordable, and I now try to offer payment plans to people.
Like you said, also, you also provide practice. And what I'm
Yeah.
hearing throughout this whole virtual experience that you're now running is that this practice has been something that without practice, it's been a barrier for blind professionals or other disabled people to be able to learn this work, to be able to do it. So could you talk a little bit about, I'm not asking you to get into the details here, but you've made it very clear that practice is essential here. Can you talk a little bit about whether it's in on the virtual side, or let's talk maybe more specifically about including blind professionals or other disabled people who are becoming professionals or are professionals, and how that practice makes a difference?
Yeah. So this virtual thing has opened up a lot of doors for people who might want to do voiceover who are blind, or who, oh, I use audio description. Like, can't I be part of the creation of it? And again, audio description's organic, so it has kind of developed in all these different random ways. But one of the things I'm trying to do is sort of be innovative in creating classes. And I want to delve into workshops and like shorter classes as well that people can take based on, let's not have people have to break the bank. Like, I do have to have food and like the lights on, but like I try my best. And the main thing is giving people opportunities to learn audio description and give the same learning quality experience that I would to able-bodied sighted people to anyone who would want to get involved. There are now blind people in the industry who are interested in all aspects of audio description. And, when people talk about writing audio description, and blind professionals are saying, yeah, I've done, writing, or I do writing, here's some examples or whatever. And people are just, how do you do that? You can't see. And it's more about, if you give someone the opportunity to learn something and have the gatekeeping removed of, this is a good way to do this. Here's some resources. Here's a network of people that can maybe hook you up, or here's somebody who will employ you who might give you that extra learning curve of, okay, so you sent us the track, but it's still really soft. Can you raise the gain on your mic? So someone to help you get past the learning curve as a blind person that generally keeps us from being hired for anything.
When it comes to the entire audio description experience, you address the writers, the narrators, the engineers, all of these things are covered. And it sounds like the practice that you're talking about, that learning the quality experience, learning what it means to be a professional, is something that is having real world benefits, not only to the blind audiences that are using AD, but also to blind people who are employed. Is this consistent with your AD training retreats? It sounds like it is.
Yeah, it is. I have wanted to, like, what I'm doing now is starting to talk to other blind individuals who are already in the industry. A lot is voiceover based. There are also, of course, blind editors and blind engineers. And so if you're able to have a positive example of things, of, hey, it's not about how I do this, It's about the finished product. So if you're listening to stuff and you're like, wow, this is quality audio description, I would fix maybe this, this, and this. It's like, okay, so let's get those people who are doing it some training or some guidance, or what are they doing? What's the process? And can this be better? Giving each other feedback, and especially with writing, is essential. Quality control is essential. And that's something that blind people have been doing since the onset of audio description. And frankly, I would say you should always hire a blind quality control person. What becomes annoying is the different barriers that are still there in the industry. So people are happy to have people do stuff for free. Notoriously, people with disabilities are paid way below minimum wage. And that's even for like the entertainment freelance situation. And it's because people can get away with it because we just want to work. And in order to get any experience or any,
Mm.
on the job stuff, it's again, with audio description, you have to do it. And so in training or helping each other learn, or, shadowing another person, that's a lot of how we've learned audio description, is mentorship and listening to other people and just trying everything ourselves. Certainly for audio description, it's another thing that you just sit there and fight and have to do everything yourself in order to learn enough to start building a website or a thing and say, hey, this is my material. But people are still terrified of people with disabilities.
Mm.
People are still scared of blind people and, any kind of neurodivergence or disability. And as I mentioned, other marginalized communities, there's something I'm very passionate about is, in general, getting more audio describers in live situations, and all the aspects of audio description having a more diverse and inclusive population. So there are not a whole lot of describers of color, just because, again, audio description developed organically, and a lot of people had to do it as a volunteer service. So in that aspect, you've got people who can retire. Depends on the population, depends on where you're at, depends. And the other thing is, volunteer, again, it's a lot more women than men. And, the men who kind of are in the industry are either also doing voiceover, such as yourself. You start with like the acting of the voiceover side of it, and audio description is added on as another skill set. Or you have someone who came from caption and like television side of it, and then they also got into the live theater. And so now that AD is an up and coming industry, and there's more things needing to be described in streaming services and all this stuff, cool. Let's have more people involved of different backgrounds, because again, as a human, you're never going to be completely objective. And I don't have the same life experience as someone who is blind of color. And so maybe if there's a series about Nelson Mandela and someone's like, we'd like you to voice this thing about Nelson Mandela, that's when, as an ally or as a teacher, I would say, this is an opportunity where you lift someone else up. You say, hey, I don't think that's great for me, because I think you should have a person of color voice this. Not only casting wise, to have the audio description be seamless into the audio and part of the final production, but just because the nuance that someone brings to the performance of audio description is highly influenced by who they are as a person. And so it's just, as the marginalized communities are starting to speak out more, as people are starting to be able to say, hey, I'm a different gender than you thought of, or like, hey, I would like to express this. There's a lot of pushback and barriers, but there's still my goal in ADTR is to create opportunities for knowledge. Knowledge is power. People, if you learn how to do something, if you network with people and you get feedback, again, this is an art form, you need to get feedback, learn how to give and take it. And sometimes stuff's brutal, man. So it's one of those things where you're never going to please everyone because we're human and all we can do is our best. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It doesn't mean that you should be so scared of having the difficult conversations that you don't have them. And so as the industry changes as far as people being involved and people with disabilities being more welcome into, hey, let's figure out how we can do different processes to create audio description. There's just more and more curriculum to create. There's more and more updates. I don't think I've ever taught the same class twice. And any of my former grads who pair with me to teach now, they'll tell you we've updated the handouts every single class because stuff changes constantly. And you can't, with something like audio description, publish the same thing that you did in the 80s, the 90s, the early aughts. You now is just different. And because audio description is an art and a science, part of teaching is collaborating. Everyone brings themselves to class, and we can provide structure and we can provide information about what's going on in the industry and best practices and maybe suggestions. But again, you have to figure out your own workflow and your own way that you're going to contribute to audio description. I think, as you mentioned, with all the different jobs of description as well, you need to come to a workshop or a training, or you need to be able to try stuff so you can go, oh, I really like writing this. It's like a puzzle. I have to like insert words in and like, it's a challenge. This is so cool. I like this part of it and I'm faster. I don't actually want to voice that's a lot. You might come from a voice background and be like, I only want to narrate. But then all of a sudden you're like, I also want to learn the engineering piece of this because I majored in radio or whatever, and blind people have those same experiences. It's just the opportunities that aren't there. It's we have life experiences, people with disabilities, people who are queer, we all have Earth planet experience that we bring to life, but the opportunities that people don't have. And sometimes I think it's really hard for people to recognize, well, I don't want to hire you because A, B, and C. And it's like, yes, but if I never get to that point of getting experience, then I can't try it out. I can't get better. And I believe the best thing to do as an educator is to try and get, training out there, try and get information out there, have the difficult conversations, consistently figure out what people are doing and invite people in. And then as someone who's sighted, you're a great example of, at this point, it's still, we need sighted allies, people to say, hey, I know you wanted me to do this project, but actually, I really think you should consider blind professionals being more involved in this. And there are 6 or 7 voice artists who are blind that I can think of for this. Do you want their information? Just giving an opportunity for someone else to try something out.
It's really powerful that you're educating not only the people that are doing it, that want to do it, but also the people that hire those people. And those examples that you just gave, those conversations are happening. And I can't help but think these conversations are changing audio description from being how cheap can we make audio description to how great it can be, which is something that we've talked about on the podcast since day one. It's been part of the mission here, and it's part of what you have been doing since day one, too. So thank you, first of all, for your outreach and your exhaustive contribution to how great this work can be. And thank you for teaching the way that you teach. You've made a mark, Colleen. Your audio description training retreats has had that beautiful spillover effect. And I want to make it very explicitly clear to acknowledge that you are making that impact. So thank you.
Yay, I'm glad. I try to hold on to that as I am stuck in the minutia of LLC applications and taxes and how do I get dog food? I'll only get dog food and not my food. How do I do this? Oh, we're still trying to create the certification for describers. And so, as I'm doing that, I'm volunteering my time for that. It takes up the time that I can't volunteer to do other things. And so how do I start to delegate some stuff as well? And what action items can I give people who are interested? And how do I get more blind people in here? Like, how do I not just give away all my stuff? Like, that's the other thing is the balance of a business versus something that you want to be able to give.
Mm.
So there's certainly a lot of stuff with, resources and links and handouts and examples and stuff that we give to the students. And part of that is, okay, what business structure do we do this as? And, what's the best way to do it? Because I want to be accessible. But again, as we all know, it's a capitalist society that we have to live in. So,
Sure, and you're also going into uncharted territory. This hasn't been done the way that you're doing it before.
yeah,
There's no guidebook. You are guiding the way. You are paving the way. And that's something that I feel like each of us in focusing on our own efforts, like you with audio description training retreats, with this podcast, with the ADNA, with Kevin's Way, each of these and many others who are doing their own thing, that it all is leading towards this. I'm going to use the word greatness, not in the sense of look how great we are, but greatness in the sense of what the final result is.
yeah. And that's the thing too, is that there isn't like a solid goal of, oh, we hit Oscar nominated something, we got awards for audio description and now we're done. And this is how you do it. And there's this audio descriptions being done all over the world. It's severely lacking in certain places. There are certain people who have never heard of description still. I mean, there are many blind people who don't even know this exists. And many sighted people who just have it on by mistake and go, what is this? So it's still also just basic awareness and education on top of the minutia of creating a beautiful, nuanced performance that can become part of the art. How do we communicate and teach filmmakers so that they're thinking of audio description from the beginning of a film and not the end? How do we get to producers and companies, as you mentioned, who are starting to go, let's bid lower and lower and lower? It's that thing of how cheap and fast can we do this? And this isn't something you can throw at an AI. You just can't. And so, there's the debate about text to speech voice versus a human voice in audio description. Sure, my phone, I will listen to text to speech all day so that I can get my work done. But when I'm watching a movie or when I go to see a play, I don't want something that's pre-recorded text to speech because it doesn't bring you into the performance. It does not help you suspend your disbelief. It just doesn't match I mean, the AI, the voices are good, but it's like, it's not quite there.
To your point also, as a voice talent, I got no interest in reading someone's Twitter feed or emails or calendar appointments. If I may, it sounds like you're addressing the informational versus the immersive, like the storytelling versus just information. And
Yeah.
you make a really clear point there. It sounds like also with your approach with producers of content and their inclusion of audio description that we will definitely have to have a follow-up conversation. I think we're pretty close to wrapping up here. Is there a chance that you could share some more final thoughts with our audience before we wrap up?
I would say that right now, audio description is in a very sort of contentious place in certain aspects of it. Blind people and other people with disabilities are sort of on the edge of audio description, knocking at the door going, okay, we listen to this our whole lives, and we'd like to be a part of it as well. Is that possible? We don't want to just be consultants. Can we be part of this? And the most important thing right now, in my opinion, is awareness and education and networking, giving each other feedback, contacting each other. If you are interested in doing audio description, it is something that you have to invest in and also put the time in. This isn't something that I can give you a bunch of information and you're just going to be good at it. We give you lots of practice time in class and feedback and stuff, but then you have to go on and continue to apply that stuff as you take up audio description. And so it's sort of like a call to arms of like, raise awareness of audio description, tell people about it, get people to listen to it, start calling out the people that do this well and the people who don't do this well. And if you're already in the voicing industry or you're already writing, or ask for what you're worth, start trying to influence the very low rate per finished minute that you just look at your boss and say, do you think you could get lunch on this? Because I don't think I can. And just sort of, I don't quite know the perfect way to fight the cheap and fast audio description thing, but I think just teaching each other and trying to lift each other up to have conversations, because audio description is an access need. It's not a want. It is access to so much of the world for blind people.
Thanks for sharing that. And Colleen, how can we reach you? Social media, websites?
For Twitter, we are at AD Retreats, and the email for any and all questions about the training or anything is info, so INFO, info at adtrainingretreats.com.
Thanks so much for joining us, Colleen.
You're the best, Roy.
You are too. Thank you.